350 Seattle is a collection of passionate, dedicated, global activists that have banded together to fight the root causes of climate justice. When looking at the 350 Seattle site, the overall feel is dark, heavy, and hard to digest. The images themselves are dull, chaotic, and shot from distant angles, making it hard to grasp what is happening in the photo. They are background noise covered with text and do not appeal to the current website or convey a story. The logo does not feel professionally designed, since this is one of the first elements that is seen when landing on the 350 website. It gives the entire website a more amateur look. To start the redesign, I created 2 distinctly different mood boards to influence my future decisions and direction. One mood board is based on the descriptive words bold, messy, and bright, while the other is based on peaceful, natural, and beauty. While I really liked both concepts and could see the redesign moving forward in either direction, the bold, messy, and bright board excited me as a fun direction to take the new redesign. Each wireframe started with 16 columns and 20 pixel margins and gutters. From the basic layout, I created 2 opposing boards. One board was more rigid and square, while the other was full of bubbles and more free on the page. At this stage, my lack of creativity kept me from moving forward with the bubble look, and I went ahead with the more traditional layout, opting to incorporate other bold elements further along in the design process. After some trial and error, I settled on a ripped paper look that I felt matched the rough and gritty feel of both the 350 cause and the bold, messy, and bright mood board. When it came to typography, I knew I wanted to incorporate the feeling of graffiti and markers to the page to match the look and feel of activism and handmade signage, keeping in mind that these fonts needed to be used sparingly, as legibility and messaging is the utmost importance on the page. I chose Shodex for the graffiti style font as it was powerful, yet still easily readable to the viewer. The font Komiko Title is used as the marker style of fonts, which still gives a handwritten appeal, yet is easier for the reader to digest in larger chunks. The original color palette was chosen from my mood boards, bringing in the colors seen in the inspiration artwork photos. I loved the juxtaposition of the bold and cheerful colors with the gritty handwritten fonts and the activism theme of 350 Seattle. Applying color was tricky, as I wanted to have bold elements with a professional application. To lighten up the feel of the current 350 website, I chose a white background with blocks of gray. The bright colors are used as highlights and contrast to add interest, punches of color, and emphasize keywords throughout the website. When it came to redesigning the logo, I wanted to have a more designed, professional look than the current logo on the 350 website. My strongest concepts were narrowed down to 3 distinctly different logos. Ultimately, I chose the globe in the number 350 to showcase the earth and peace. The globe image was a perfect fit for the overall feel of the page with its line art and simple blue and green colors. The letters on the word Seattle needed to be adjusted slightly with kerning and some line height adjustments. When it came to imagery, I had played around with 2 different moods and storytelling with my images. One look was focused on activism, anger, and movement, while the other on beauty, peace, and green earth. I ultimately merged these together with a focus mainly on harmony, love, and togetherness, yet with strong images of strength and fight. With the images themselves, I brightened up the pictures for a more cheerful look, as well as zooming in closer to the individual subjects to help the viewer feel more connected to the 350 causes. At this point, I also added vector line images of swirls and leaves, pulling from my original mood board inspiration. I wanted to give the page movement and a more organic yet edgy look. When pulling all the components together, a lot of reworking and adjusting needed to be done. Colors were tweaked, the placement of elements on the page were adjusted, and images were swapped. I added texture to the scrap paper elements, swapped out the line art for a more flowing design, and added a faded newspaper background to really give the overall look a gritty yet bold and bright appearance. One thing I wish I had learned earlier in the design process is to test the prototype out in the chosen output format sooner. Most of the time I was guessing on the sizing of the images, fonts, and distance of objects. When I saw the design in action, I realized my placement and sizing was very off. I learned that on a website, wording can and should be smaller than I was originally designing for, and wording and spacing on mobile devices should be bigger and more spaced out than I had originally thought. I ended up redesigning my entire layout to create smaller chunks of information and more breathing room to the viewer. My biggest hurdle in this design was the header of the original page. I was playing with placing my logo, the menu, and the buttons at the top of the page. Once I saw the prototype on the computer screen, I realized the entire banner was too large, bright, and very clunky. By customizing the top banner to a torn paper texture to match the rest of the page, I gave myself enough room to have a larger logo on the top left and yet smaller text at the top of the right side of the page. In the end, I used these principles across several formats to create a cohesive website, mobile site, and an Instagram post that feels connected and matches the 350 Seattle client.